answer them the best I can. And as always, there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of thought behind this, but it doesn't mean anything if it's not for Jesus. If our motivation is not the Lord, spreading the gospel, glorifying His name, and just bringing Him renown in all things that we do, then it's all for naught, brothers. So none of these pedals, none of these guitars, they don't mean anything if it's not for Jesus. So again, it's always all about Jesus. It's always all about bringing Him glory, spreading the gospel so people can be saved, and just allowing people to worship, teaching them how to worship, and creating those moments where they can worship the only true Savior, the only true God that calls us children when we put our faith in Him. So, hey guys, Troy here. Today I'm going to walk you through today's version of my pedal board and signal chain. Alright, so before we launch into this, just a couple small things. I'm powering the board with 3 Strymon Ohio power supplies, the R30s, they're the skinny ones. And I am using a Novo 24 pedal board by Pedal Train. There will be links in the description below for these pedals, whether to Sweetwater or Amazon or otherwise. If you buy anything through the link on Amazon that I provide, I will receive a small commission, just so you know that. It helps support the channel, so if you're able to do that, I'd appreciate it, and if not, no big deal at all. If you have questions, please feel free to comment them below. As you know, I'm pretty active on the channel, and I will do my best to answer them for you. Alright, so I'm going to flash a picture on the screen showing a diagram of my signal chain. I'll talk you through it really quick. So the first thing would be the interfacer, but USPS failed me and did a return to sender on me because of some address conflict, which didn't actually exist. But anyway, so that'll be here one day. Then it goes to the whammy. Sometimes you can probably guess what song I use that on. I use it for exactly one song by Bethel. Starts with a G, ends in glory. And then it goes to the deep 6, which I use sparingly, into the Pog, into the Kilt, then into the Audition. The Audition is a box. It's like a send and return box that I use to like plug in different overdrives to try them out so I don't have to rip apart my board. That's by Goodwood Audio. Pretty cool product. Then it goes into King of Tone, into the Super Bolt, and then into what I'm saying Boost. And because the Boost is like it's not a revolving door, but there's varying pedals for that position. So the Tumnus gets most of the action. The Walrus Audio Emissary gets a lot of time, and then like a Klon, or maybe like a Haunting Mids by JHS pedal. Something that does a great boost will go there. Then it goes to the volume pedal. I use Dunlop Volume X Mini pedal. From the volume goes to the Julia for some spooky sounds. Then it goes to the Strymon Flint, and then the outs of the Strymon Flint start the stereo signal. So stereo out of the Flint into the timeline, stereo out of the timeline into the Big Sky, stereo out of the Big Sky into Kemper. The top Kemper would be always on a Tone Junkie AC30 profile for now. I haven't programmed the Mastermind LT to switch 2 Kempers at one time. I'm not even sure I want to do that, and I'll explain why. Tone Junkie AC30. If you don't know about Tone Junkie profiles and you're a Kemper user, I highly recommend you check them out. Best profiles out there, in my opinion. And 2 great guys as well, Jonathan Sullivan, Nathan Sousa. Really cool guys. Like their profiles, like them as people. Just support them if you can. Then it goes out to the second Kemper, which is switched by the Mastermind LT. So the Mastermind LT is going to tell that Kemper what profile to be on. So we'll jump into the LT really quick. I'll explain kind of how that works. Not going to go super in-depth in this video, but I'll give you an idea of how it's kind of controlling the board. So the Mastermind LT sends program changes. I'm not a MIDI expert. In fact, I was very afraid of MIDI until a really good friend of mine kind of took me under his wing and taught me about it. And now that he's given me kind of like a foundation, I actually can do this on my own, which is pretty cool. So I can troubleshoot problems, I can set it up and have it do the things I want to do for the most part. So I'm pretty happy with the learning curve. It wasn't too bad. And it certainly helps that RJM's products are amazing. So the RJM Mastermind LT is this particular one. They make a handful of other controllers as well. This one gets the job done for what I want to do. It controls the MIDI devices on the board as well as the Kemper. So the way this works is every delay preset, every reverb preset, every profile has a particular program change number. And the Mastermind LT is sending MIDI signal to each of those devices and kind of pulling out those numbers is the way that I kind of visualize it. So let's pretend for a moment that the dotted eighth delay, for what a beautiful name, its program change number in the timeline is 58. When I press this button, it's going to reach and pull out number 58 for me. For the reverb, let's say it's number 70. It's going to reach into the reverb and pull out number 70. And then once I switch this, so right now I'm on this delay setting, that reverb setting. When I hit preset number 2, it switches. It pulls out another delay from the timeline. Let's say it's program change number 65. And then it pulls out another reverb from the big sky. And then when I change songs, it can reach into the Kemper and pull out a different profile if I wanted to. So in this case, I'm using a matchless and a Bassman dual profile, and then the other Kemper is on the AC30 as usual. So then if I go to Glory, for example, it switches the delay and the BPM, which is cool because the Mastermind can send BPM signals to the timeline. Switches the BPM, the delay, the reverb, and also the profile in the Kemper. So now I'm running 2 AC30s together on the Kemper. So another really cool feature of the Mastermind LT is that it has a global preset. So if I want to get to a swell preset, which I use like a reverse delay and a cloud reverb for that, I just hit the preset button that I'm on again, and it goes right to the global preset. So it's a really cool feature. Love that RJM threw that in there. So the Mastermind LT is incredibly powerful. The editor is very easy to use. Once you get the hang of it, it's really irreplaceable. And what's neat is I have like different scenes. So you can like, I have a true stereo scene, has all these presets and all these reverb program change numbers. And then I have a mono scene. So if I can only run mono, I'll load up the mono scene and fire that through the Mastermind LT. So now my reverbs are tuned for mono the way that I tune them. I have a scene set up for if I'm running the big sky through the effects loop of the Kemper. So it can do a lot of cool stuff. And it's very intuitive, and Ron and Sherry are awesome people. So they're super helpful, best customer service in the game. Alright, so that's how the LT is controlling the MIDI devices on the board. If you have questions about that, please feel free to comment below. Otherwise, I'll probably make a video in the future about kind of how it works more in depth, but that's not for this video here. Alright, so hopping in the signal chain here, first we have the whammy. I'll demonstrate that to you in a little bit, but we'll go to the compressor. So I use the compressor for No Longer Slaves, for example. I use it to really squash the signal. I'm not a always on pedal guy. I don't believe in always on pedals with the Kemper setup anyways, because you can get the Kemper to sound exactly as you want it without an always on pedal. It's kind of a waste of a pedal in my opinion. So I get subtle compression from the Kemper all the time, so I use the Deep 6 for a more aggressive compression. So I'll turn on No Longer Slaves here and you can hear that. After the Deep 6, we're into the POG. And the POG I use not a lot, but I use it in many different ways. I like to keep this knob roller on there for the high octave because I feel like the high octave really kind of determines what the POG is doing. It's the most noticeable. So I like to have immediate control over that all the time. And the different ways I would use that, maybe first one would be just to thicken up the signal on like an octave part. So that would sound like this. So it just adds a little bit of thickness. It's very subtle. Like What a Beautiful Name, there's octave parts in there. I would do that. Really any Hillsong tune, there's tons of octave stuff in there. And then I would also use it for some like atmospheric type stuff where I'm going to crank up the high octave, add in maybe some Julia, and you get maybe something like this. I also use it on the Living Hope hook on like the second part of the chorus. That sounds like this. that kind of like plinky thing going on. And then I also use it on Glory to Glory when it ramps up on that build. I'll put the high octave way up there and I'll do something like this. So when I pull up that note, you hear like the octave kind of coming through, it makes it sound a bit meaner. All right, next up would be the kilt. I don't use the kilt a lot. If you watch the How I Approach Overdrive Pedals video, which I'll link in the description below and have one of those little pop-up things show up over here, it tells you that I like to have each overdrive bring its own thing to the table. If it can't bring something worthwhile to the table on its own, I'm not going to have it on the board, which means that like I don't like this has to be stacked with something else to make it sound good. So the kilt does bring something special to the table. It's just not special enough to where I use it all the time, but I like to have it. It does have its own thing going on, and I do like to have it on the board. It just doesn't get a lot of action. So that sounds like this. Or if I stack it, say with a clon, I'd play like maybe the hook to All Hail King Jesus. So it's a cool pedal. It does stack well if you wanted to. From the kilt, we go into the audition box, which again is a send box to try out overdrives and other pedals if you want to, but I use it to try out different overdrives without having to rip apart the board. Then from the audition box, it goes in the King of Tone. The King of Tone is all over most of the videos that I do, so you've heard what it sounds like. I'm not going to go into it in depth here. I'll just give you a couple of examples. For the questions out there, the red side is the high gain side, and the yellow side is the overdrive side, and I set it up on overdrive mode for both, and that's it. So from the King of Tone, I go into the Super Bolt. Super Bolt they use for like Jesus Culture stuff, Bethel stuff, maybe some Passion stuff. It's not as versatile as the King of Tone. It has its very own thing going on, which I love, so it gets used on some specific songs. I also gravitate to the Super Bolt when we're doing like spontaneous stuff. For some reason it's got like this really mean sound that I love. So when we're getting into builds and things like that, I use it for that. So maybe something like if you're playing like sixths, it sounds pretty cool. responds really well, like when I really dig in, like how I'm pulling up on the string there, it sounds pretty cool, so I love that sound that it gives. Okay, so next we go into a boost pedal. Again, Wampler Tumnus gets a lot of action here, Walrus Audio Emissary, Klon. Basically what I like that pedal to do is add like an upper mid push. For example, like I don't praise the name, I use an upper mid push pedal that would sound like this. So you see what that does is the upper mid push allows like neck pickup stuff to really cut through. It doesn't get muddy. It's very shiny still, has that brightness thing going on, but it also allows it to stack really well with other pedals. So if I want to get like super crazy, I can stack like the Klon with the red side of the King of Tone and do just nasty stuff with it. Or more commonly what I'll do is I'll stack the Klon or that boost pedal with the yellow side of the King of Tone to beef up like what was previously like a light overdrive to make it sound like this very bright, kind of vibrant, heavy overdrive. Like This Is Amazing Grace. I'll play that real quick. So it really gives like a cool energy to what we're doing. All right, from the boost, we go into the volume pedal, self-explanatory, then into the Julia, which kind of showed what I use that for. It's mainly like a vibrato chorus pedal. Use it for atmospheric stuff, use it on This Is Amazing Grace, on like maybe spontaneous moments where we're kind of getting into a build. When it's soft, I'll use it to provide some warble and some movement to the sound. It's a really cool pedal, very versatile, highly recommend that. From the Julia, we go into the Flint, which is like one of the longest running pedals on any pedalboard iteration I've ever had, and I love it because I use the swell side. I set it to the 80s mode. I turn the decay almost all the way up. It's like I turn it all the way up, then I back it off just a hair, turn the color basically all the way up, and I get a swell sound out of it, which sounds like this. Then if it's not high enough, the mix, I'll just take my foot and crank it up, kind of like an expression pedal. And then when I'm done with the swell sound, I can just kill it or bring it back. So I've gotten pretty good at using my foot for that. Then I use the tremolo side for like, you know, Mighty Warrior stuff. For that, but I also use it when we're playing like, we play some stuff at a Tuesday night Addiction Recovery Gathering, for example, that's kind of bluesy. I don't have a blues tone going on in this particular set list, but I would use like a slow trem. So from there, it pretty much wraps it up. Goes Timeline Big Sky, which you guys have heard a gazillion times from a gazillion players. Sound great. And then it goes into the Kempers. All right, guys, I hope the video was helpful. Hope it answered the questions that you have. And again, if it didn't, then feel free to comment your questions below and I'll get back to you and answer them the best I can. And as always, there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of thought behind this, but it doesn't mean anything if it's not for Jesus. If our motivation is not the Lord, spreading the gospel, glorifying His name, and just bringing Him renown in all things that we do, then it's all for naught, brothers. So none of these pedals, none of these guitars, they don't mean anything if it's not for Jesus. So again, it's always all about Jesus. It's always all about bringing Him glory, spreading the gospel so people can be saved, and just allowing people to worship, teaching them how to worship, and creating those moments where they can worship the only true Savior, the only true God that calls us children when we put our faith in Him. So hope the video was helpful. Hope that last bit was encouraging. We'll see you in the next one.